Anyways, okay. So, habits that would, okay. So, I have found that because I've really truly been working at this, really truly becoming a better me for about 2 years now. I had fallen hard and I wasn't doing well, and God had to kick me in the butt, and I thought I had to do it all by myself. And so it's been a whole long process. And creating those habits and creating those right things have been the huge one. Like even like, for instance, getting up early in the morning, and I just got up a little bit earlier and a little bit earlier, and this was 2 years ago. Well, then I quit, and I've recently started again because it was one of those, I did it for about 4 months, and I thought I had a good habit, and then life got in the way, and I was like, okay, I'll get back at it again, and then I didn't get back at it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this time though, like as soon as I said, instead of get up at 6:45, I'm going to get up at 6, and instead of going into work at 7, most days I'm coming into 8 o'clock now. So I'm spending that time with me. I was like, I haven't got a straight schedule down, so I've not been able to completely form the habit of what I'm doing every morning, because I was walking and then it got cold and I don't want to walk when it's below 30 degrees.
Right.
So there's just some things that I'm still tweaking on and trying to find those habits when it comes to that. But yeah, some of those other little things like putting down my phone a little bit more, like it's just a little bit of time. Like I'm keeping an eye on my time on my phone, and I'm trying to push myself. So it's just those little tiny habits like that I'm trying to form and I'm working on forming to be a better me.
Right. Okay. So a couple things triggered in my mind as you were talking. One is that I think sometimes we have a tendency to beat ourselves up. Either it's going to be all or nothing, or I'm doing well or I'm not. And I love how you're just like, you know what? I'm just doing baby steps. Maybe it's just 5 minutes earlier than it was. Maybe it's 15 minutes. Then, and just create that habit. And then you can, if when you feel ready to move to that next place, then you can move to the next place. So I think sometimes we can be on the other side of like, well, I can't do it perfectly, so that I'm not going to do it, or it's not going to matter. I think the other thing too can be that fear of, well, I don't know, what's the right thing I should be focusing on? If this book says that I should be focusing on the right thing with the right habits, then that's a difference. Well, I don't know what the right habit is, so I'm just going to sit here until I know, right? Which doesn't help us. It's not moving us in the direction that we want to go. So not being stuck by fear and not doing anything either in that way. The other thing that really kind of triggered for me as you were talking too is how this whole idea of building habits can work both ways, right? You saw it work when you were starting to, on a regular basis, get yourself up earlier. And then what happened when life happened, right? And you started to go do the other one, you started creating the habit, or building the habit of going the other direction, right? And so I think it's just awareness of which direction are my habits taking me? Are they taking me towards what I want, or are they taking me away from what I want? And what I like to do is have the rule of don't make it 2 in a row if it's a negative thing. So say, for example, like there's a morning where you just can't get your body out of bed for whatever reason. Okay, fine. Like give your body what it needs, pay attention to that, or maybe it's, I don't know, we had our small group Christmas party last night. So there were things going in my mouth that don't usually go in my mouth, but I had planned ahead for that, and that's okay. But my rule is if it's a negative thing, don't let it be 2 in a row. So like today, I'm not eating, the things I did yesterday, right? I'm not going to let it be 2 days in a row, or I'm not going to let it be 2 days in a row where I don't get up at the time I said I would, or whatever, those things are. So, so I think because otherwise, it's just like with the positive habits, the more time we don't do what we want or do the things we don't want, the easier it gets to keep going that direction too. So kind of, just being aware in mind, right?
I think it's a lot of bad habits are actually easier. It's easier to sleep in.
I know. I don't do anything to make the weeds grow, right? There are weeds growing outside right now. I'm like, what? Like they're getting nothing. And my plants on my tower garden, I'm like, making sure water and a fan and a light. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah.
And weeds will come up on their own. They'll grow on their own, whereas your flowers and your vegetables have to be planted, and you have to nurture them, and you have to water them and baby them. And the same goes for the bad habits in our lives. Think of the bad habits as weeds. They're coming up no matter what. That's what we've been engraved with, are those bad habits. We're not worthy. We're not good enough. We're not. And that's what is inside of every single one of us, whether we want to believe it or not. But that's what we've been told from parents, from teachers, from your neighbor, like everybody.
Social media. I mean, you
Yeah.
think about like
Oh, yeah.
all the lies that are
Yeah.
fueled brains
Whereas
because of that.
good habits are the flowers and the vegetables. We literally have to plant that. We have to
Yeah,
water
yeah.
it. We have to nurture it. We may have to put it in a little tiny pot inside of our
Right,
house and have our own
right.
little grow lamp on it. And like we have to take care of it.
Yes.
Otherwise,
yes.
it's just going to wither and it's going to go away. And you will
Well,
not get
that's
any beautiful from it. You will never get the flowers from it. You'll never get the vegetables from it.
right, right. And that's what I was just thinking as you were talking earlier was, number one, the weeds, yes, they grow faster, but their roots are really shallow, right? So yes, it may take more time for my beautiful, other plants to grow, but they're going to have deeper roots. And those are the ones that are going to produce the fruit, right? Or the
Yeah.
flower or whatever.
Yep.
Whereas the weed is a weed and, not really contribute anything positive to the environment, around it. So yeah, good things to be thinking about and just kind of what am I giving my attention to? Because we're either watering the weeds, the habits we don't want, or we're watering and nurturing the habits we do want, which are leading to that what we think is a disciplined life, but really it's just a series of habits and routines that we've created.
Yeah.
So that it just happens on autopilot, right? Like that's the goal we're going to. I bet Michael Phelps did not have to be told to go to the pool to go swimming, right? Because he had something inside of him that was compelling him, and that just was a routine. I get up, I do this, I do this, I do this, or whatever, like his whole day was built around these routines.
But he wasn't born with that habit.
True. Yep. He chose it.
He chose it. He had to, someone helped him plant that seed. Someone, when he was little, helped him water that seed. They drove him to his practices. They encouraged him. His coaches encouraged him. His coaches fed it. So.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, right? Because it starts somewhere. That seed has to get planted and it has to get nurtured.
And sometimes it's us. But you think of your kids,
Yeah.
Someone's got to plant those seeds. And I tell you, nobody else is going to plant those good seeds. Nobody.
So true. Yeah. We have to take responsibility in that for sure. Right.
Yeah.
And eventually, for our kids when they're young, yes, as moms, we are more responsible for them. But as they get older, I love one of my mentors says, you now become responsible to them, but not for them. Right. Eventually it gets to the point where they can get themselves places, they can get themselves out of bed, they can make their own lunch, they can do their own laundry, they can, right? Yes. They can go to the store, they can take care of themselves. And now you just get to enjoy the relationship because they've created all these other habits, on their own. So let's just end this chapter. I want to read the last it says here. So it talks about the evidence of a halo effect around habit creation. So it says in their studies, this is page 59, students who successfully acquired one positive habit reported less stress, less impulse spending, better dietary habits, decreased alcohol, tobacco, and caffeine consumption, fewer hours watching TV, and even fewer dirty dishes. I put a smiley face next to that one. I'm like, fewer dirty dishes. Right? Long enough on one habit, and not only does it become easier, but so do other things as well. That's why those with the right habits seem to do better than others, but really they're just doing the most important thing regularly, and as a result everything else is easier, right? Like I don't think we would knowingly do things the hard way, which is how actually they start out chapter 7. So let's kind of transition over there for a few minutes and talk about this idea of willpower. In the first sentence, I wasn't even thinking about this when I just said what I said until I turned the page. It says, why would you ever do something the hard way? Right? Why would you ever knowingly get behind the 8 ball, deliberately crawl between a rock and a hard place, or intentionally work with one hand tied behind your back? You wouldn't. But most people unwittingly do every day. When we tie our success to our willpower without understanding what that really means, we set ourselves up for failure, and we don't have to. So let's talk about this whole idea of willpower. Because there's this really famous phrase out there, if there's a will, there's a way, right? Like we can all, right? We all know that. And yet, I don't know if that's really led us the right way. What has your experience been with willpower and kind of what that looks like in your life or has looked like?
Well, I mean, like as far as that's concerned, I feel like we do it the hard way because we're always taught that that's actually truly the easiest way. And it's hard for us to change. Very few people are great, let's just change everything. Most
Yeah.
of us don't want to change. And so we
Right.
feel like if we just keep on going this way, it's going to be much easier. If we just give in, if we just deal with the situations, it's going to be much easier. When in all reality, if we really truly do change and we really truly do look on the other side, we actually will find that it is a lot of times much easier. But
Mm,
the problem is we never give into that change. We just
mm,
keep on doing the same thing we've always done. The things that we've always been taught is the right way to
mm,
do,
right.
the easy way to do it.
Yeah.
And that can
Yeah.
apply to like really anything in your life.
So true. Right. And I think that we talked about timing on the last chapter about sticking with it, the number of days or the number of times it's going to take to keep it. And that's the other point that he really pulls out here is that really a lot of it has to do with timing. When we talk about willpower, that has to do with timing. And he equates willpower to being like our battery tank, right? So like say, think about
Mhm.
your phone. If you've charged it while you were sleeping, you're going to wake up to a full battery. But every single time you go on your phone, and it's going to take up more bandwidth, more battery power if you're zooming like this, or if you're streaming something versus if you're just answering a text or whatnot, your battery power goes down. So this happens to my husband all the time because he has an older phone, and so by middle of the day, he like wants to make a phone call or he's on the phone with our son and wanting to have a conversation with him. And then all of a sudden, like it's gone
Yeah.
and he can't do that. So how have you found like timing to tie in with willpower? Have you found that kind of concept that he talked about in here to be true in your life at all?
I had a really hard time putting that aspect in, like thinking about that aspect in my life. So it's there, but I don't know. I had a hard time like connecting the two.
Well, here was the connection I made. In the morning, it is much easier for me to reach for healthy food than it is at night, right? Because like, let's be honest, after 7 o'clock, no one is craving broccoli. I mean, I'm not craving broccoli at 7 o'clock in the morning either. Yeah, that in the fridge that I made it before is perfectly fine with me. I'm not looking for a piece of cake at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
However, at 8 p.m., like because I feel like my battery tank for my willpower I've been using it up all day. Right. And there's something called decision fatigue. Like literally, the more decisions you have to make in your day, the more your brain gets tired. And then what happens is exactly what you alluded to a minute ago in
Yeah.
the other chapter. We default to like whatever our default would be, right?
Yeah.
So like for example, if I know I'm stressed, if I am tired, if I am emotional, things like that have been really draining my energy, my battery life, my willpower, I am much more susceptible to finding the bag of M&Ms my husband brought home or go digging into the bag of chips or whatever that thing is than
Yeah.
if I, than if I've been, kind of managing my energy and my emotions and all of that throughout the day. Have you ever found that to be true?
Okay. So then, yes. So like with me, so getting up in the morning, the thing is if I don't get up in the morning, if I don't read in the morning, I am not going to
Mm-hmm.
read at night. After sitting at my
Mm-hmm.
desk for 8, 10, whatever hours in the day, like I want to go inside and I don't even want to fix dinner, but I want to fix dinner. I want to fix dinner. I love
I do,
fixing
I
dinner.
do. You
Um,
can crack pot in the morning when you feel like it, and then you don't have to feel like it.
well,
Take the
I
time
mean, I have
off.
teenage girls, so most of the time I'm just like, go fix this.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
don't know what we're eating. Just go find something and fix it. Um, but yeah, at night, like I don't want to do dishes. I just want to just sit and
Mhm.
because I'm done really for the day.
Yeah.
He did tell the story about I was actually really interested in this, that story of the toddler, so the toddler torture in 63.
The marshmallow test. Yeah.
So my oldest son actually participated in a study at SIU.
Okay.
And that was like they did all these different toddler tests on him. And he went for 3, 4 years, every 4 to 6 months. I don't remember what it was. And that was one of the tests. He passed it every time. So I read that. I was like, I forgot about that because I read this chapter a little while back. So I was reviewing
Yeah.
it for this. Um, and that was one of them I was going to actually have him read because he's now 19 years old. So I'm like, look, you're going to be much more successful because you did not reach
Yeah.
for that marshmallow or candy or whatever that was.
Right. Well, isn't it interesting? Just like we ended the last chapter with that, the more you work on a habit, it starts bleeding into other areas. And the same thing kind of came out with this this marshmallow test, right? That there were high delayers and there were low delayers, right? And the low
Mhm.
delayers were 30% more likely to be overweight and later suffered higher rates of drug addiction, right? Just from, and they were able to track that from whether or not they could, withstand, what was it, 2 minutes and not eat a marshmallow
Yeah,
until that
it
time
was,
was up,
and it was hard.
right?
And
Which,
he literally had to he had to have his hand on the placemat. There were finger markings, and he left his
uh,
hand there. And
yeah,
she left the room. Of course, we had the window where we could see him, and there you could tell he was squirmy,
yeah, yep,
but
yep, yeah.
he never did move. So I'm like, you're gonna be successful.
Signs.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. We get into those squirmy moments all the time, whether it's with food, whether it's do I work on this or not work on this, whether it's do I read my Bible or not, do I pray or not, do I go exercise or not, do I whatever, like. And so I know for me, if I haven't gotten good sleep, I can see a huge difference the next day. Like, for example, last night, for whatever reason, I think I had some things in my mind that were happening today. And so I just kept waking up and I just woke up going. And so I've had to be really on my game today to like manage my energy and manage my choices so that they're going in the right direction. But the other thing, and he pointed this out in here too, is like even the food we eat will make a difference in our willpower, right? And some of
Yeah.
that is, yeah, what do we reach for? We reach for the carbs, we reach for the sugar, we reach for the starchy things because it's going to make us feel good. And it starts this like cycle.
Yeah.
And, and actually leads to us not making as many, good willpower choices and things like that, as well. So what I love here is that, he talks about like, because it's like a battery, we have to figure out when our battery is full, right? And when it's full is when we want to make those choices, right? When it's full, don't make those choices when I'm depleted because, I'm going to default. Like, so it's like, what's your default mode? Is it the bag of carrots or the bag of chips? Is it I'm going to work on this project or I'm going to binge Netflix, right? Like push comes to
Right.
shove and tired or cranky or emotional or whatever. It's been a long day. We're going to go to, the chips and the Netflix every single time. And so kind of reminded me of like the Eat the Frog First book, by Brian Tracy. Like,
Yep.
what's one thing? So should we think about like, let's tie this back into the one thing before we finish. Like your one thing should not be waiting until the end of the day, unless you have found a way to recharge your battery before that happens. And you have created some kind of a routine or something that kind of gets you back, maybe like somebody is like a really busy mom. And so like your best time is going to be when the kids go to bed. Right. And that can be, but you're going to have to be intentional about making sure your battery gets recharged, right after they go to bed or at some point later in the afternoon. So when they go to bed, you don't just head to the couch, you actually go and do the thing that you were wanting to. But I think for most of us, like it's going to be probably first thing in our day. Right.
Yeah.
Is that how it is for you? If there's something really important and you want to give your best focus, is that when it needs to happen?
Well, and that's why I have dedicated that time to myself too, because I'm by myself.
Yep.
And this was one thing I actually challenged one of my friends last week because I've always said I'm not a morning person. But yet I find that I can give myself my best time first thing in the morning. And so I had a friend last week. She's like, no, you don't understand. I'm really not a morning person. So I told her, I said, I challenge you to quit telling yourself that you're not a morning person. I challenge yourself.
I am again, right?
Yeah. I challenge you to quit saying I can't do it until I've had 3 cups of coffee or whatever it is. Instead, get up every morning, put a smile on your face and say, it's going to be a great day. We've got this. Let's go. I said, and it won't be like an overnight thing. I said, but I challenge you to do it. And I guarantee you will see a difference because I've always said I'm not a morning person, always. But yet but like my mom taught me, like in front of the kids, whether I'm cranky or not in the morning, I still go in there and I'm like, good morning. Let's rise and shine.
Right.
But anyways, but in this last 2 years, I feel like that's one of the things that God's dealt with me on is like, you need time for you. And I've given you this time. So you need to quit saying it and just take advantage of it and take care of you. Because if you don't do it at this time, you're not going to do it at noon. You're not going to do it at 5 o'clock. You're not going to do it in the evening.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if you had the time to do it, your energy level is going to be down, your willpower down, and like I like to say, like you pretty much for the most part, I mean, again, a young mom may not be able to say this 100% of the time, but for most of us, especially those of us whose kids are a little bit older and get themselves in and out of bed on their own. Right. I know this day does happen, ladies, for those of you who are in that stage of like, having to do it all. For the most part, you control how your day starts. You may not have much control over what happens in the middle of it. You may not have much control over what happens at the end of it, but less things are going to be a factor first thing in the morning. And so, yes, I'm totally with you. For me, it's that first thing. Although I will say this, I tried for a while to get up and read my Bible first. And I wasn't able to focus. I was like still in that waking up mode. So what I started doing was going and doing a 20 to 25 minute exercise thing with my app so that it gets my flowing, gets my body moving, it gets whatever. And then I go make my cup of coffee and go read my Bible and pray and do that stuff. And I found that it doesn't have to be like the very, very first thing I do. I just created this routine that fills up my energy, my battery, right? So that now when I sit down, I'm not falling asleep when I'm praying because I'm awake.
Finding
maybe it's like school and then your time can start like at 9 o'clock, right? Maybe your time 9 to 11. So it may not be like the first thing in your day, but you're making it happen earlier, in your day rather than later.
For me, it's doing the easier things to work on me. Like for instance, I started out walking, but then it got dark. So I can't, it's dark at 6 o'clock. So I'm not, of course, not walking at 6 o'clock in the morning. So then I had to rechange. So I sit in the massage chair first. But while I'm in there, I'm doing either my vocal warm-ups or I'm doing, I send a text. I try to send a text to my husband and to my kids every day. Some sort of uplifting, whatever kind of text. So then I'm looking for those for them. So I'm doing things like that doesn't take as much mental capacity first thing of the day, but getting myself recharged and ready. And then when I'm done with that 15-minute, at least the first 15 minutes, I may sit in there longer than 15 minutes. Then I'm usually at that point, I'm about 30 minutes into my morning. By that point, I'm ready to actually start reading and absorbing what I'm reading at that point. So
massage chair. I think I'd add that to my list. I think I need that in the morning. That sounds amazing. Right. But here's the key. So whether it's, first thing or early in the day, or whether you have to be the one later in the evening, I think the whole point of this chapter is we don't have a limitless supply of willpower. You can't just expect I'm just going to be in front of the chocolate cake and just call it my willpower. I'm not going to just be, at 7 o'clock and say that I was going to work on this project, but be like, everybody else is watching Netflix and that, right? It is really something that we have to manage and be aware of and be mindful of. And so the more we can do it when our tanks are full, which is probably going to be earlier in the day, the better, or find ways to replenish that throughout the day. So that we have the willpower, to do that. And, I love this. So it says, when it comes to willpower, timing is everything. This is page 71. You will need your willpower at full strength to ensure that when you're doing the right thing, you don't let anything distract you or steer you away from it. Then you need enough willpower the rest of the day to either support or avoid sabotaging what you've done. I was like, wow. Right. And that's why I have a rule. I don't open up email. I don't open up social media. I don't open up text. I don't open up, I don't want anything that's coming in from some other outside person to influence and to sabotage either what I'm planning to do in that time or what I've just done. And, and so I think that can be a way to really kind of guide it and, and monitor where it's going. So I love this. Don't fight your willpower. Build your days around how it works and let it do its part to build your life. When you use it first on what matters most, you can always count on it. So lots of good things in there. Okay. So before we go, anything specific staying out to you that just from our conversation today, and if you're listening to the replay, I challenge you to ask yourself this question right now. What's one thing that I want to pull out from this conversation today? So it could be related to disciplined life. It could be related to willpower on will call. Is there one thing for you that okay, this I'm going to kind of keep with me or do something about?
I don't think just one thing.
Well, it may not be one thing, but what is one thing? I always like to say let's pick something, even if it's not the only thing. And you don't have, I don't want to put you on the spot because you just happen to be the only person on here live, but really, okay, before I move on to something else, pausing and saying, what is one thing I can pull from this that I can apply or take action on or think on or pray on or, whatever that is, because that's how we grow. We can sit for an hour and have a great conversation, but if it's not actually something that we take into our everyday lives, then yeah, it was just a great conversation. It didn't really affect any change. And that's not our goal, right? Our goal is to be affecting change. So I think the biggest thing for me is what is it that matters most, and when am I going to do it? And I've been doing that. I've been creating these time blocks earlier in my day, because for me right now, some of the content that I'm working on is what is my really big one thing. And if I wait till later in the day, my brain is scattered, it's tired, it's distracted, then my husband walks in, or whatever like starts happening around me, and then I'm off track. But if I can get that time in, earlier in the day, then I find I'm a whole lot more productive in where I'm going. So yeah.
I think for me, on page 55, it goes back to that, where it says the trick is to succeed is to choose the right habits and bring just enough discipline to establish it. That for me is really truly where I feel like I have been focusing, but I could focus on even more, is just what are those habits that I need to, like, I feel like I'm way more successful than I was 2 years ago, but I still have so much more room for growth. And what are those habits that I can put in place that will even set me up even better and even stronger for where I need to be.
I love that, because we're always growing, right? I will never have arrived and never have gotten to the place where I have no growth to do. And it's going to change in different seasons. I mean, you and I were having this conversation before we got on this call. This is like the week of your big Christmas concert at church. So your week is going to look different, and the attention you give to other things is going to be different this week, because you're choosing to focus on what you're doing with this big program. And that's okay, right? It's when that season doesn't have an end to it that we have to really pull past. And so, it may be, I'm in a season where I'm in a really building part of my business, or I'm in a season where I've got kids at home that need more attention, or I need to be more intentional in my marriage, or I've just got some people around me that really need some extra support, so I think this is just this ongoing checking in with yourself, because it is going to shift, it is going to change. And what matters most right now may eventually get to the point where it becomes a habit and routine, and then you don't have to think about it as much. And then something else is going to be what your main focus goes to. So you can't choose wrong, right? As long as it's in line with where you feel like God is wanting you to grow in your life in the 7 different areas that we talked about. And it's just, taking one step after the next, with making the best decision you can with the information you have right now. Right. And then you can go back and evaluate. Well, good conversations. I love this book. So we are actually meeting next week, just because of the Christmas week. We don't want to, be meeting right after the day after that. So that's going to be on the 19th, and we're going to do chapters 9 and 10. I'm sorry, 8 and 9. So 8 is about a balanced life, and 9 is that lie that big is bad. And then we'll be done with our lies, and that'll be perfect, because then we're going to start off the new year with like, okay, now how do we do this? How do we actually implement the one thing into our life, which I think will be a great way to start the new year. So next Monday, the 19th, is when we're going to be having our next book club conversation, if you can join us. And this is open to anybody. So if you have a friend or a family member or a coworker that, you want to invite, have them pop in. That's totally great. It's great. They can pop in anytime and catch in with us. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. Central, I am co-hosting a Get Set for 2023 workshop, where we're going to really be going through a simple system to help us think ahead about what maybe our one thing is going to be as we move into the next year. So if you're available for that, we'd love to have you. And then we've got a power hour coming up this Thursday. So I don't know about you, but I've got a lot of things to get done before Christmas and before we head out of town, and, I'm unplugged and things like that. So you can come on Thursday and bring something you want to work on. It's like study hall for adults. And we just get to be accountable to what it is that we want to work on, and not be distracted doing all the other things, but focus on, the one thing or the couple of things that really matter to move us forward. So thanks so much for being on live with us today, Shayna. And thanks for those of you who are watching the replay, and challenge you, watch out for these lies, right? Watch out for the lies when you tell yourself I'm not disciplined or organized or whatever that is. And also watch out for the other one about, I can have willpower whenever I want. So, all right. Have a fantastic rest of your day. We'll talk soon.
You too. Bye.
All right. Bye.